Welcome to AlexGs Aquarium, everybody. Today I want to give an update on the aquarium build project, let everybody know exactly what's been going on with this build since the last update. To start off, I have completed the moisture proofing of the fish room area. Now this was an enormous project. I put up over 400 square feet of FRP boards along the wall and over 1,000 square feet of plastic, followed by multiple rolls of duct tape and Gorilla Tape, which after using them both, go with the Gorilla Tape. It's just a lot stronger stuff. Might be a little bit more expensive, but it's definitely worth it. Now, the ceiling and the walls and everything being moisture proofed is not 100% sealed, but it's pretty darn close. This room is going to have a negative pressure. Any of those small little areas that aren't 100% sealed should allow air to flow into the fish room instead of allowing moisture to get into those areas, because I really want to protect this house and make sure the humidity doesn't cause problems. Now I will say there is a little bit of moisture proofing left to do with plastic on the ceiling, and that's just around electrical boxes, as I have to wait until I get everything wired up the way that I want to before I can finish it off. And that's just going to be little things as we move forward. The next thing I moved on to was the utility sink. Now this utility sink came in right around the time I was finishing up the moisture proofing, and I got this installed. I have raised it up instead of keeping it at the normal height that it's at, because I've just had too many issues with having a sore back, neck, or shoulders after cleaning things like the skimmer cup or calcium reactor media or sand or anything else I had to do some heavy cleaning with, pumps, just constantly leaning over in the sink. So this one I have raised up with 2x4s a few inches, and that's going to just allow me to have better access to work in the sink more comfortably. Now I made a custom trap for this sink as well, primarily because I don't want to see sand or gravel or pieces of coral frags or whatever other objects might fall down that sink make it into the drain, as the drain line for this sink goes into an extractor pit. Now if I jam that pump up or break it, I'm going to be the one that has to go in and fix the extractor pump pit, and that doesn't sound like a very fun job, so that's why this trap has been added. With the sink being completed, I got the RODI system hooked up again. It's fully functional the way it should be. The only thing I haven't done is finish the power that's going to be wired up to run the booster pump. But that'll be coming soon. And overall, this area turned out real nice, and probably going to have some more modifications to it moving forward. Next, I decided to get the 150 gallon off of the dolly it was on and get it onto its stand where it's going to be. I did go ahead and get this tank cleaned out initially with a razor blade, as it looked really bad. I've sprayed some vinegar and water to loosen up some of the old coralline out and other caloris buildups on the side of this tank. Looks pretty good. It's still got a vinegar and nasty water mixture in the bottom of it that I have to clean out, but for now it's not looking too bad. Now I have gone ahead and shimmed up the stand and leveled the tank. Now I am going to build a canopy over the top of this tank. It's going to be a little different than the last one, but the same kind of concept, where it'll be a higher canopy, there'll be a shelf over it, and I'll have power runs up there to allow me to power lights and pumps for this tank. Another project that I finally got finished but just haven't tested yet is the old 100 gallon water storage tanks. I've taken these and got them both plumbed together. The tank on the right hasn't been fill tested or anything yet. It actually did have a bit of a buildup on it because it used to be the primary salt mixing container. So I've dumped a little vinegar in it, got it kind of cleaned out, burned up all that scaling that was in there. Just needs to get a rinse out. But I have hooked up the old Mag Drive 12 to this tank and all the plumbing. I haven't put any plumbing in to pump the water out to other tanks yet. I have a valve set up there on standby. I just have to figure out exactly what I'm going to do with pumping water out of these tanks. I don't expect them to really be used for anything other than top off water, and maybe here and there just have a little bit of extra RO on hand. But I'll take these tanks, but I will have them plumbed up and ready to go, as they are going to be needed to do the initial fills on the frag tank and the 265 and the 150 that's sitting right next to it. The 265 gallon has had a little bit of work done to it. I took the protein skimmer and did an assembly on it. It hasn't been cleaned, but I got one of the pumps out here for recirculation, some of the plumbing, and kind of just roughly put it all together. I do need to buy another DCP J-boat pump because the other pump that I had on here is an older style 15,000, and I just really like the DCP model better. It seems the controller's built a lot nicer and the DC connections were doing a lot better. While the pump still worked, I'm going to keep it for other things right now, maybe as a backup. I just want to get it to be the same on both sides. So that's something that has to be done, and I need to get some other return pumps together for the other auxiliary tanks in the system. I'm also going to have to get the UV sterilizer, the calcium reactor, the heating system, the apex, and I don't know, probably a couple other things hooked up to be running in this sump before we can get this system up and running. With all of the other work that has been done on this system, I finally got back to working on the coral frag tank here. And this tank I've done a lot of work on, and probably can notice a lot has happened since the last time that I've done an update. And the first thing I did once I kind of got a lot of this other stuff out of the way was come back around and build a canopy for this tank. You might not see the canopy because it's behind this tank right now as I had to move it. Now looking at the canopy sitting behind the tank here, you'll notice that it's just a simple 2x4 frame. It's got 5 legs on it, 2 on each side and 1 in the back. I wanted to make this canopy light but also functional. So I have put a layer of plastic on the top of this, which is going to serve as a moisture barrier. I have cut holes through to put the hanging chains for the light rack in here, which should work really well to hang the existing light rack that's sitting over the temporary tank at this time. I also added 12 electrical outlets. This one here isn't wired up yet, as it's going to be used to terminate to my drop box, but I have another box here in the middle and another box here on the end. And that's going to have 2 circuit breakers it's attached to and 12 outlets total. So it should give me more than enough power. Now the sides of this canopy and the front and back all have FRP boards cut out for them, so they'll be removable panels that will act similar to my last aquarium system's canopy. But I also added another feature. Now I've added plastic to the top of this for one main reason, and that is the coral frag tank is located underneath a bathroom and a laundry room. And with all that plumbing there, I just don't want to take any chances of water from a leak getting in this tank. So I basically made an umbrella or a roof over the top of the canopy with 6mm plastic that has been sloped with some PVC piping, and that is going to act as my barrier from water getting on this tank. It does extend out over the edges of the tank, front, back, and sides, so if there is a plumbing leak that develops on this ceiling, I should be able to hopefully divert water away from this tank and not inside it. With the canopy being complete, I turned my attention back to the tank itself. I wanted to get it prepared for a pond underlayment and the pond liner itself. I started off by getting my new cross brace system finalized, which is sitting right here. Now these cross braces are something I haven't done before, and I'll talk more about them in a future video when I go into more detail on this once I prove that they work or don't work. But essentially what I did was attach an aluminum plate on the front of the tank and the back of the tank to act like a bigger washer. And essentially what's going to happen here is this steel threaded rod will basically be tensioned up to hold the sides of the tank together to prevent outward bowing on either direction. In the middle, there will be PVC, which is going to be butted up against our pond liner and sealed up with silicone or maybe some black label or RTB, depending on which one I think will work best for that. The idea there is to prevent any moisture from getting to the steel threaded rod. I haven't seen this exact concept done before, and this is going to be a test to see if this works. I will use it on my display tank. With the cross bracing rods ready to go, I took another step and I siliconed the inside seams and any screw heads on the inside of this tank. I just wanted to make sure there weren't any extra big bumps or indentations that might impact how the pond liner fits in the tank ultimately. Since this is not going to be a temporary tank and is going to be operating hopefully for many years, I want to make sure that it's built properly, so I took that extra step with a little bit more silicone. With that done, I decided I wanted to do a job that was going to be a little bit more messy and stressful and time consuming, and that was removing the glass of the old plywood tank that used to sit on this stand. Now I kept the glass from both of my old tanks, but I didn't attempt to free it because I knew it was going to be very challenging to try and do that, and I just didn't have the time. Plus, keeping it on the front of the tank was a great way to keep it safe for shipping, as the movers had a lot easier time moving the glass because it had wood on the corners and really couldn't be easily damaged. I went ahead and I took a Sawzall to that and I cut off all the plywood I could. I exposed the RTV seam and spent several hours separating the glass from the plywood. I got it done after I finally found a good technique, essentially making a garrote wire out of stainless steel and a couple of pairs of locking pliers. After I got that off, I got one whole side cleaned with a razor blade, and when I went to flip the piece of glass over, unfortunately, it slipped out of my hand, hit a sawhorse, and completely shattered. There was about a 3-foot piece of that glass that I was able to salvage, and I have to say it was not a great feeling when it happened. I screamed out no. I remember saying, "This isn't happening, this is some kind of dream." And I was very upset. But looking back on that, I have a new piece of glass on order that I'll hopefully get in the near future. But I'm very thankful that I did not get hurt. A 200-pound piece of glass fell right next to me. I didn't fall into it. It didn't fall on me. I didn't have shards of glass hurt me. It could have sent me to the hospital or worse. So I am thankful that that did not happen. Sucks, but it happens. I took a day off and then I got back to it after I just let the glass sit on the ground for a day. I was like, I don't even want to come down here. But I got it cleaned up the next day. Once it was cleaned up, I turned my attention to the pond liner on this tank and the underlayment below it, which is just a felt-like substance. It's just a felt cloth, essentially. I took the time, I laid out measurements, and I got both installed. I'm not going to go into detail on it again because I'm not sure if this is going to work yet, and I don't like to share things that I'm not confident in. But I will say, the one thing with this pond liner was to fit it to this tank properly. Took a lot of time and patience with measuring and marking the pond liner up out in the finished basement area on a just big flat plane, and then I folded it up and unfolded it into this tank shape. With the underlayment and the pond liner in, I cut the window out for where the glass will be. I haven't secured anything because I want to make sure that the glass is fitted properly before I attempt to do any of that stuff. I did go ahead and put tile on the bottom. This is just travertine tile, not unfilled, it's just cut, doesn't have a polished coating on it. It's just ground smooth. Now I soaked it in water to clean it off, and then I went ahead and I removed the UPC stickers from every single tile. When I was looking at them, I noticed that every one of these tiles had an individual sticker, and when I pulled it off with a razor blade, I learned that they're metal stickers. So I don't know if it's tin or aluminum, but it has metal in it. So if you're buying tiles, which I have seen several people use these for coral frags, and they do seem to be reef safe. Make sure that you're pulling stickers off in case you do something like this. Now I put this tile in for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to protect the bottom of this tank, so there's a second layer of pond liner and then the tile on top. If this works and looks the way I want it to, I am going to use this type of method to cover the bottom of the display tank as well. And that is kind of where I've ended my work on the frag tank. I'm still waiting for the glass. I have drilled out holes for overflows in here. I'm going to do two 2-inch overflows, but I'm not going to cut the pond liner for that until I have this tank essentially ready to fill. When that happens, I'm going to do all the plumbing. I'm going to have the glass sealed up, and I'm going to let this tank sit for a good couple of weeks probably before I attempt to do any filling on it. But until that time, I'm going to keep working on this project and moving forward with everything that I can to get stuff done and ready for a fill test. That's the update on the aquarium build. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a like. And of course, if you have comments or questions, please leave them down below. Try to get to them as soon as I can. And when this tank is fill tested and I'm confident in it, I'll have more detailed videos on how I built it out there. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.